welcome to BBOC Live. It's 10:30 a.m. Eastern, and this is the Week 4 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, are my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Colin Wilson, Mike Calabrese, and of course, the one and only Mr. Brett McMurphy. Got a lot to get to today. We'll give our two best bets, as always. We'll talk two marquee matchups, including USC, Michigan, and the big one tonight in prime time between Tennessee and Oklahoma. We'll put together our weekly round robin underdog moneyline parlay, and we'll hear from Johnny Manziel to get his weekly Hail Mary pick of the week. Before we get started here, pretty wild night in college football. All three games coming down to the final play, setting the stage for what should be a great Saturday. We talk about the ever-changing landscape of college football, but some things never change. Number one, is Cam Rising playing or not? We still don't know. Number two, Nebraska. I mean, you got to feel for Nebraska fans at this point. They've lost 27 straight versus ranked opponents. I think they're 6-28 in one possession games over their last 34. And amazingly, they're 0-8 in overtime over the last decade. They haven't scored a point in overtime. I was shocked to see that stat. They haven't scored once in 8 overtime games. So pour one out this morning for Nebraska fans. At least they don't have to endure any pain on this Saturday. But before we dive in, Cam Rising, we're just not going to know until the first play of the game, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been told since last week that he wouldn't play against Utah State. He was expected to play this week. He's got stitches on the ring finger on his throwing hand. He has issues gripping the ball. The question for Utah is a Cam Rising that's less than 100% more effective than going with a fully healthy Isaac Wilson? It's cliche, but it literally will be a game time decision. Everybody watching on TV, everybody inside Boone Pickens Stadium. If he trots out there for Utah's first series, then he'll be the starter. I would not be surprised either way. I think he wants to try to play, but if you can't grip a football, how effective can you be? But yeah, everybody's obviously going to be monitoring that all day till kickoff.
Yeah, and if it's has to wear a glove, how will that impact everything? There's a lot of uncertainty there. And yeah, word, generally speaking, doesn't get out of that Utah camp. I recall a game against Washington State when Cam Rising was out. Nobody in the market knew until opening kick of that game. Before we do get started here, if you want access to all of Action's pro projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Kerner, who I believe went 15-0 in the NFL last weekend, and other members of the Action Analytics team. You also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread moneyline and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today. That's actionnetwork.com/pro, and use code BBOC20 at sign up. One more time, that's BBOC20 at sign up for $20 off. All right, let's get into our first round of best bets. I'll kick things off. I'm going to go with Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner. We'll talk about this game later, and I'll get everyone else's thoughts, but I just can't get to this number. I've aggressively upgraded Tennessee. I've downgraded Oklahoma over a field goal. I mean, they have not looked good, but they should be much healthier today than they've been all season at offensive line, which has really completely hampered their offense. Guys moving all over, a fourth string center, and they haven't been able to run the ball or get protection. They should be healthier at wide receiver as well, have other options besides just throwing to Deion Burks. And while Tennessee has looked impressive, it's been against Kent State, Chattanooga, and an NC State team that, now that we have a few more data points, at home against Western Carolina and at home against Louisiana Tech, they weren't leading after 3 quarters in either of those games. So that win doesn't look as impressive. This is the first true road start for Nico. And in terms of home field advantage, this is as big as it gets, right? prime time in Norman, first SEC game, should be an electric atmosphere. I just can't get to this number. Tennessee might just be that good, and I can't. I should be aggressively upgrading them even more, but I'll take the touchdown 7.5 with Oklahoma tonight. Colin, where are you going for your first best bet?
Love that. I can't wait to talk about it in the marquee matchups. I'm going to go to Rutgers. There's like 3 national books with 3.5 out there, but they are getting scooped, and this is going to a flat 3. This is a great spot for Rutgers here, going up against a Virginia Tech team. They get 6 days to prepare for the biggest ACC game on the schedule against Miami, Florida next Friday night. You can't think the Hokies are looking at this game, and that's bad because Rutgers' offense is #1 in the nation in havoc allowed. That is, do you allow tackles for loss? Do you throw interceptions? Do you make mistakes? And the answer is no. And people would argue that Rutgers' schedule to this point has been pretty poor, and yes, it has. But Greg Schiano every year is top 10 in havoc allowed. That's just how disciplined they are as an offense. When you look at the Virginia Tech defense, just flash back to the Vanderbilt game. It wasn't, it wasn't a fraud box score. They are outside the top 50 in success rate. They allow too many explosives, greater than, being inside the top 75. All they do on defense is generate havoc at a top 20 level. Well, that gets negated against this Rutgers offense. Plus, Schiano, extra time, it's bankable. 17-8 and 1 against the spread off of a bye week in his career. Everything's pointing to Rutgers here. Give me the Scarlet Knights. Let's get this cover in.
Yeah, I would say the biggest issue for Virginia Tech is, number one, they're dealing with some injuries. Their linebacker room has been very underwhelming and is a bit banged up as well. And the run defense has not been good. That was the vulnerable area coming into the year, something that Vanderbilt took advantage of. And even last week against Old Dominion, they covered in that game, but Old Dominion starting quarterback was out. They had some freshmen back there. Old Dominion, one of the worst offensive lines in college football, ran all over Virginia Tech. You know what Rutgers' game plan is going to be here. It's going to be to feed Monungai, one of the most underrated backs in the country. So if that run defense is not up to snuff, Rutgers is going to get the game script that they want. Brett, moving on to you. First, I got to give you and Calabrese your flowers we went head-to-head last week in the Alabama-Wisconsin game. I know Van Dyke got hurt. Doesn't matter. You either get to the window or you don't. So good call there. But where are you going for your first best bet?
Yeah, Stuck, I think you'll approve of this one. I like Louisiana at home against Tulane. Then I put it in the app earlier in the week. I think it was highest 3.5. I think I got 3. It's now down to maybe 1.5. A lot of people coming in on the Raging Cajuns. And this is a big situational spot. This series actually goes back more than 100 years. They've played 29 times. They rarely play in Lafayette, only the 4th time ever playing in Lafayette, the first time in 13 years. So the Cajuns are going to be jacked up. They've been impressive. They haven't played anybody, but they've been impressive. They've had 2 convincing wins, easy wins, overmatched opponents. And now you look at Tulane coming off consecutive games against power opponents, Kansas State and Oklahoma, both games that they could have, maybe should have won. Ultimately, they didn't. Now they have to go play at Lafayette, 2 hours away, a school that they have no interest in playing. And what's up next? Their AAC opener against USF. Give me the Raging Cajuns plus the small number and what will be the Cajun-like Super Bowl atmosphere.
Yeah, I agree. This would have been my best bet if this was still at 3+. I have some 3.5, which, I mean, now it's at 1.5. That means it's doomed. But this is one of the best situational spots on the board. Extra time versus Tulane. It's got to be gassed just emotionally, physically, after stepping up in class 2 weeks in a row, with a big game on deck. And you already have 2 losses. Like Tulane's one of those teams that comes into the year, maybe you steal one of those games and then you're in the group of 5 playoff discussion. So it's got to be deflating that they were in both and just didn't get there. You're right. Louisiana hasn't really played anybody at all. So there's still some uncertainty there, but I like this spot and like Louisiana as well. Calabrese, where are you going for your first best bet?
So Kurt Signetti tried to warn us in the offseason saying, you want to hear about my results, just Google me. Well, if you go through his record and you Google him, he's 17-11 against the spread since bumping up to the FBS level. And since 2022, He's beat 11 opponents by 28 or more. He's a run it up kind of coach. And you don't have to go very far in this season to see exactly how that played out. He's up 42-3 against Western Illinois. Begging is a spot to just show some mercy. Just don't be a maniac. He drops 35 more points on him in the second half. Last week, they bump up in weight class. They play UCLA. They beat him 42-13. This is not your granddaddy's Indiana team. He wants to absolutely change the culture, have them be in that upper tier of the Big Ten, not just for the play on the field this year, but also to help him in recruiting. So it's clear that he wants to go ahead and run it up. And Charlotte is the team that comes in leaking oil. They're on their third option at quarterback. Trexler Ivy has twice as many interception or turnover-worthy throws in his career as big-time throws. And he's up against the Maple Missile, Curtis Rourke, who's just absolutely on fire. 40 of 50 in his last 2 games for 595 yards, 6 TDs, and 0 picks. And Charlotte, their issue is pretty simple. They're not a consistent offense, but they have hit the big play. They're averaging 3 plays of 30 yards or more per game. Unfortunately, against Indiana, this is one of the best teams in terms of limiting explosives in the entire country. So they're not going to be able to dink and dunk it down the field. And if there's an opportunity for him to run it up in the second half and avoid a backdoor cover, Cignetti is the coach you want to back in this spot. He's a maniac, but he's my maniac this week here in week 4.
I actually disagree with you here, but I don't know if I'm going to wait, if I want to bet this pregame or wait till live, because I am afraid of Cignetti running this up. But you mentioned they're down to the third string option at quarterback, but it's, Max Brown is hurt, who was their number 1. Ivy's better than the second string. Like the second string, if he was healthy enough to play, I would not look at Charlotte here. Biff was just going with his true freshman guy, and he said he wanted to go with him until the wheels fall. I mean, what did he have? 6 turnover-worthy plays, 3 picks, was sacked 4 or 5 times. It was a disaster. Ivy had to come in last week and save the day. He actually looked good. He had a horrendous year last year. But I do think in this case, the third option is better than the second. But you're right. It does scare me a bit. Cignetti, it seems like, is wanting to make statements each and every week to just build that momentum at Indiana. And even if you go back to the FIU game, I believe they broke a 50-yard run with a minute to go to cover that game as well. So Indiana under Cignetti might just be one of those teams that you want to either bet or avoid when they are laying a big number, because it does seem like he wants to make a statement. Good luck there, and thanks for all your first best bets, gentlemen. But let's move on to our first marquee matchup of the day. We're going to the big house between USC and Michigan. USC, it's been over 10 years since they've covered or won a game in the Eastern or Central time zones. But this is a different USC defense than we've seen in the past. Before we share our thoughts, I did speak with Johnny Manziel earlier in the week in our weekly scramble drill to get his thoughts. So let's hear those. The Trojans will be looking for their first win and or cover in either the Eastern or Central time zones in over 10 years. USC 5.5 point favorite here. Johnny, what are you seeing?
I like USC in this game to cover. I think there's just too many questions right now on the Michigan side of things to just really get behind them and back them. I mean, as good of a defense as they have with some star-studded players, I just feel like offensively, going to a quarterback change, is Alex Orji going to be the guy to finally bring some life and spark some life into this Michigan team? I just don't see it happening. And I think, USC, what they bring on the offensive side of the ball is something through the first 3 weeks of the season that has looked really good. I think Lincoln Riley will have these guys ready to go. And, something that you don't see Michigan obviously lose very many games in the big house, but this is not the same Michigan offense that we've seen in years past. And I think they're going to once again struggle this week.
Thanks, Johnny. Let's get to our thoughts on this game. This number's come way down, but I would still look at the under here. You're going to have one team, I think, in Michigan that's basically playing like they have a bet on the under. Going here to Alex Orji, he can't throw the ball. I assume that they just have to shorten this game. They have to spam run it, but that USC defense is significantly improved. And this USC team, this is Miller Moss's first true hostile environment, And that offensive line, we'll see how they hold up against the Michigan defensive line. That could really throw their offensive game plan. It's just it caused a lot of chaos up front, because when you look, they played LSU and looked great, but the LSU defensive line is nowhere close to the caliber of defensive line that Michigan has. So this USC defense significantly improved. I think the Michigan defensive line can really just cause a lot of havoc up front. And Michigan basically is going to be playing, I assume, like a service academy team. Maybe they have a good script early, and they have some things, some wrinkles that USC isn't expecting. Maybe they get on the board early, and then I think even then you can look at a live under if you get a quick Michigan score, because I just don't see sustained success for this Michigan offense throughout. But Colin, where are you looking here?
Yeah, I agree with you. Michigan is going to try to make this a service academy game with a shortened number of possessions, but I'm going to go with USC. I love USC. I don't like the number. You and I talked about this on the podcast, how there's just major inflation. You've seen that kind of bought up over the last 2 days. So I'm going to stick with USC going over their team total, 23.5. There's just too many advantages here for Miller Moss at the quarterback position going up against this Michigan secondary. And I realize this is his first time hostile environment that he is going to be in. It's different than Quinn Ewers coming up to the big house because he's played in the college football playoff. So I do expect Miller Moss to have a series or two where he's not as crisp. But when he has pressure in his face, which he's going to get, Michigan's defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, runs blitz over 50% of the time. He's going to come right at Miller Moss. Miller Moss's short sample, 10 of 14 when he's pressured, 13% big time throws. He has not made a mistake yet. So Miller Moss is going to be able to handle pressure. Once the big house kind of settles down and he gets into his rhythm, I expect them to tear it up. And the coverage grading from Michigan has been poor. This is not the same Michigan Wolverines secondary from years past. When you look at Jair Hill, Will Johnson, linebacker Ernest Hausman, they have allowed 35 of 49 targets to get caught for over 250 yards. Pressure's not going to matter. This coverage secondary is not going to matter. So when you throw in the added element that USC's defensive coordinator, Danton Lynn, was Wink Martindale's safeties coach at Baltimore Ravens, that's a leg up for Lincoln Riley to come in and say, we know exactly what Wink's going to do, and here's where we're going to attack. Could be a little rough at the beginning. I like USC over 23.5 total points.
Yeah, that is a good point. USC extra time to prepare here as well. And, Wink Martindale, kind of a one-trick pony and what he likes to do. You mentioned those coverage grades. It's just the Michigan defense, it's just not as well schemed and not as complex as it's been. And, Will Johnson, one of the best corners in the country, can only cover one side of the field. There's some holes on the back end. I will say, it is paramount for Michigan to get off to a fast start here, right? Miller Moss, first true road start. Quinn Ewers had some experience in big games, big road games before. Moss hasn't. You got to take advantage of that crowd. You got to stay in it early, because this is not a team that's built to come from behind. So if they get behind and have to throw it, then it's lights out. Brett, Michigan has yet to cover this year. You think that trend continues?
Yeah, Stuck. I like USC. A lot of the things Colin mentioned. Also Moss, that he knows the blitz is coming. He's got one of the fastest releases in college football. And I'm not too concerned that USC has not had success in the Eastern time zone. It's because they rarely play there. It's like, well, USC's never won in Canada. Okay. They've never played there. So I'm not concerned. They're going to score some points. And I'd rather back a team that I know can score some points as opposed to hoping that a team that just made a change at quarterback because their previous quarterback threw 6 interceptions. Well, Orji will not throw 6 interceptions. How do I know that? It's my lock of the week. Michigan won't attempt 6 passes. So do you really want to put your support behind a team that's simply going to be an academy team? Run the ball, unless they can pull off what they did against Penn State last year, run the ball every play in the second half, which is a totally different team. I like USC here. I don't think it's going to be a rout. I think it's going to be close, but I think USC has enough offensive weapons and improvement defensively to get enough of a margin in Ann Arbor.
Calabrese, what are you looking at here?
I'd go under the team total for Michigan, 19.5. I agree with a lot of the points you guys have made already. If they had an entire offseason to build an offense around Orji and his running ability and build in so many different wrinkles in the RPO game and to give him the best chance possible to build confidence early in this game, perhaps I could talk myself into a Michigan side or over on this team total, but he's attempted just 7 passes in his entire career. And now you have Lynn, who I respect greatly, with an extra week to prepare for all of the quarterback runs, the zones, the reads, everything that Michigan is going to try to put in Orgy's basket to give him the best chance to succeed and move the 6. I just don't really see that materializing here. And I know that you can get into a little bit of trouble when you try to make direct comparisons on box scores, but USC played LSU, an LSU offense that is light years ahead of where the Wolverines are at this point. They held them to 20 points. They bottled up the running game for most of that performance. And I just think that LSU gives them so much more to deal with from an aerial perspective. So being able to walk defenders down into the box, I think this is just, it's going to be very difficult to envision any long scores for the Wolverines, and these sustained drives with a quarterback with no experience. I just don't see it. I know that 19.5 in a college game seems like a very low total for a home team, but barring a defensive or non-offensive score in this game, I don't see Michigan getting there.
Brett, working in your favor, I wasn't born yet, but back in the mid 80s, USC did, you said they didn't play in Canada. They did beat Oregon in Tokyo, 20-6. And in 1989, they were, I never knew this, but they were scheduled to play Illinois in Moscow, but they ended up moving the game to LA, back to LA. Do you recall either of those 2 games?
Well, Stuck, of course, everyone knows USC played in Tokyo. Come on, that's why I said Canada instead of Japan.
Yeah, but what about the Moscow? They were going to play in Moscow? Do you remember
I
that?
do not recall that one. No, I do not remember that.
Stuck. I feel like that's got to be the calgorithm getting to you with a little extra Russia, Soviet Union flavor here in week 4.
I would like Stucky
possibly.
to quit giving Brett ideas for sources stumper, because I just whiffed the other day. So please stop with it.
Yeah, new BCS, by the way, episodes out early week, every week, but we'll have our week 5 out next week. That includes the Sources Stumper weekly trivia question. Last week I swept Colin 5-0. It was a good one. There has been there have been a bunch of international games. Maybe that's the direction Brett goes. But let's transition to our weekly underdog moneyline parlay. Colin, why don't you kick things off with our anchor?
Yeah, we're going Tulsa here. I know that this is still an underdog. Usually we start with a small favorite, but Louisiana Tech is a terrible football team. And if you think that because of what they did against NC State means that they're a quality football team, they're not. Tulsa, we have confirmed that Kirk Francis is playing their quarterback. Expect them to roll here. We'll start off with Tulsa as our anchor.
Give me the Raging Cajuns on ULL. Talked about this game earlier. Great spot. Kicking in a little over an hour.
Let's get Wyoming against North Texas here. Wyoming, I think we've hit the bottom. I think we've hit their floor about how far they can go down in the power rating. I think it can only get better from here. And Eric Morris, the head coach of North Texas, came out and said, we are so far behind from injuries and depth chart. They are hurting all over the place. Third stringers playing and starting in some spots here. Let's get Wyoming on the board here.
Can Wyoming score points? That is the question. Let's stay ugly. Let's go down to Minor Nation and go with UTEP heading out to Colorado State. A little worried about like fatigue. They want to go fast. They're not very efficient late in that game. But this Colorado State team, I don't know where they're at mentally coming off of a big game, and it was a loss. No Torrey Horton. He's their best player. The defense is a mess. The entire team is a mess right now. High variance game. Give me the Miners.
Yeah, one time on this program last year, we took Southern Miss, I think, as 20-point underdogs. They lost on the last second play. I have a feeling about this game. South Florida, 17 points. I don't care. Let's go money line on these guys, because the handicap against Miami is going to be the same all year. If you can produce defensive havoc, you can make Cam Ward show the spots. And he absolutely loves to cough the ball up and loves to throw interceptions. I know everybody's in love with his Miami program, but look at what South Florida has done with the 3rd toughest schedule in the nation so far. 15 passes defensed, 27 tackles for loss. Those 2 defensive stats are near the highest in all of FBS football. They've had a quality program. They've caused 4 fumbles. They've had to go up against Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe. This South Florida team is legit and for real. I think they've got a really good chance if they can get Cam Ward to fumble this ball or throw some interceptions.
Yeah, I agree. I like South Florida. I'll touch on them in a bit, but we're getting a little crazier. Tulsa, Louisiana, Wyoming, UTEP, and South Florida. All right, let's move on to our second marquee matchup of the day in prime time between Tennessee and Oklahoma. This is, I mean, Oklahoma doesn't usually get these huge home games. Will now in the SEC. They have not been an underdog of 3 points or more at home since 2000 when they upset #1 Nebraska. Interestingly enough, Josh Heupel was the quarterback of that team. Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator. A lot of familiarity here, a lot of storylines in that game. The Oklahoma crowd, they were throwing oranges onto the field. They ripped down the goalposts. There's pepper spray sprayed all over. I think Stoops even got hit in his post-game interview. Just a crazy game, crazy celebration after. Should be a raucous atmosphere. I already shared my thoughts on this game. I do like Oklahoma at a touchdown or better. Colin, you agree?
Absolutely love Oklahoma this week. It is one of my higher volume wagers of the week. But listen, Jackson Arnold is electric in a clean block, in a clean pocket. And so you say, well, this offensive line has to be able to protect him. They have to improve. They did against Tulane. They improved from run grading. They improved from pass blocking grading. And really the biggest menace on that Tennessee defensive line is James Pierce, who lines up on the right edge. And that is perfect for Oklahoma because their highest graded pass blocker comes in right tackle Michael Tarquin. He's the best on that line. They've all gotten more healthy at the other positions. And I just expect Jackson Arnold, who doesn't make mistakes in clean pockets, to be able to execute here against this secondary that has not been tested for Tennessee. Remember the handicap, the SEC preview that Stuckey and I cut. This Tennessee depth chart in the secondary lost everybody in the 2 deep. Their first string, second string, gone, and it has not been tested with the schedule they have. So Jackson Arnold should be able to get into that with a little bit of protection. Oklahoma's defense is under the gun here. You have to run a certain type of coverage method in the backfield to stall this wide split spread, Josh Heupel, veer and shoot. What happens is you have to do a little stiff arm, get them off their timing routes, because that's what Tennessee's offense is. Expect Oklahoma to run a little quarters with a little mint package, and that's from Georgia, and that's because it's zone in the back, it's man in the front. They're going to stall those receivers, and they're going to be able to get them off of their timing. To me, the numbers are there. Robert Spears-Jennings at safety, he is the 7th best graded defensive back in all of PFF of FBS. So they have it there in the secondary. They have it there with the package they're going to run. They've been prepared for this all week, and Jackson Arnold gets clean. It's going to be a cover here for the Oklahoma Sooners.
Yeah, offensive line, key to watch on both sides of the ball. Oklahoma, presumably healthier than they have been all year tonight. What does that continuity look like? Can they handle the Tennessee front? And then on the other side, Tennessee also dealing with one injury up front. Can Oklahoma stop the run game? Nico is going to get all the press. They have very good receivers, but it all starts with the run game. And Oklahoma's defense does profile as very strong against the run. And if you can slow down Tennessee against the run, then you have a shot. Brett, you're going head-to-head like last week with Alabama. You're rolling with the road favorite here.
Yeah, I feel good after hearing all your explanations. Apparently, you guys didn't see any of their first 3 games because they played Temple, Houston, and Tulane, and their offense looked bad. You talk about, well, if Jackson gets a clean pocket, he hadn't got a clean pocket against those guys. Now he's facing a Tennessee defensive line that's better than anything they've faced. They've got the issues on offensive line. We've talked about that. You talk about bad offenses. Oklahoma's offense right now is rated worse than Michigan. Okay. I don't see how Oklahoma can go blow for blow with Tennessee. I know it's going to be an incredible atmosphere in Norman. The temperature is going to be over 100 degrees. It's going to be crazy hot, crazy wild. I don't think that's going to impact the Vols. The Vols rank in the top 3 in literally every offensive category. And finally, Josh Heupel coming back to face his alma mater. Everybody's saying how nice that is. I text some folks in the coaching industry. Heupel absolutely wants to show a great effort here. He was fired by Stoops 10 years ago. He hadn't forgot about that. He obviously will not talk publicly about it. But I just think Tennessee is the much, much better team here. And everything has to go perfectly right for Oklahoma to stay close. I don't think that's going to happen. The crowd will get out of it once Tennessee gets up. And Head to head we go again. Good luck, you guys.
Let's do it. Calabrese, you are going with a different slant here.
Well, I'm just basically taking all the points that you guys have laid out and building it into an under 57.5 here. Oklahoma's pass rush, I think, is going to be light years better than anything that Nico has seen this season. Not only can they get to the quarterback with 4 and 5, they also blitz. And when they do, they have a high success rate. They're 6th in sacks in the entire country. And opponents have just one play of 30 yards or more against Venables and this defense. And that's the key here. Tennessee has hit haymakers time and time again against the tin cans that they played early in the season. But if they have to string together 9 and 10 play drives, I think there's an opportunity for negative plays, getting behind the sticks. And that's when it's manageable to play against this veer and shoot offense. And then on the Oklahoma side of things, I'm more on Brett's side of things here. Oklahoma's passing game has just underwhelmed. It hasn't hit explosives. So the quick strike, in my opinion, is off the table. And they're going to have to play, a little bit of chess in terms of keeping tight ends in, chipping, to be able to keep James Pierce and this defensive front from Tennessee off of Arnold. So I think that's going to limit them in what they can do in the 20, 30 yard downfield kind of passing game. And if that's the case, if both of these teams are having to string together long drives under 57, above that key number of 56, I think that's where the value is here on the under.
Yeah, the only thing I would be worried about with that is the pace, but I don't mind some of the breakdown, but it should be a game with an increased tempo throughout, as you would imagine. But maybe Oklahoma decides to go slower here, keep that defense fresher. So it'll be interesting to see what their pace is. So there's only upside there for your bet if they do decide to go a bit slower. Might be smarter here. So that's something that I'll be watching for sure. But let's close up shop here with our second best bets. I'll kick things off. I'm going to go with USF. Hinted at this earlier. I like them against Miami at home. Miami is really good. I think they're a top 10 team. How good? I'm not sure we still know. Right? They played Florida A&M. They played a dreadful Ball State team. And then they played Florida, and they looked really impressive in that win. But did that have more to do with Florida than Miami? Some of it had to do with Miami, but how much? We saw Florida also get blown out at home by Texas A&M and their backup quarterback. Not a great look. So maybe that had more to do with Florida. The Miami secondary hasn't really been tested yet. I think that's their weak area. And I think this USF offense finally started to find its rhythm and timing. Those are both keys to this offense under Golish. Now, they started slow against Southern Miss. They missed a ton of wide open throws against Alabama. And then they really started to find it last week. I think you can hit some run explosives against Miami, set up some deep shots. Brown just has to hit them. I think Brown's legs also provide, just a higher floor for this offense. And, Colin alluded to it earlier. Cam Ward has been amazing this year, but he has been inconsistent in his career. Can be turnover prone if you can create some havoc. So hopefully the Bulls can do just that. So give me the 17 or better with USF. Colin, where are you going for your second best bet?
Yeah, let's go to sizzling Stillwater here and take an under on Oklahoma State and Utah. There's so many factors here going into this game that precipitates an under. Cam Rising's status for this game, we don't know. It'll be a game time decision. But even if he plays and there's maybe a bump up in the total back to the key of 55, does it really matter? How injured is this hand? Can he throw? What's his average depth of target going to be? Will he even throw that much? Will he just be a decoy to hand the ball off and maybe set up one play action pass in the game? It's going to be an extremely slow Utah offensive pace. Offensive coordinator Andy Ludwig already runs over 31 seconds per play. That's one of the slowest in the nation. So there's not going to be a lot of quick hitters here out of this Utah offense, no matter if Cam Rising is playing or not. Then the Oklahoma State rushing attack is just broken. They're 120th in rushing success rate, and they're running the same run concepts they ran for Ollie Gordon last year when he made his run at the Heisman. Ollie Gordon held to 1 yard per attempt against Arkansas's defense. Probably not going to work today against this Utah defensive front. Plus, I said sizzling, it's worse than sizzling. The severe heat warning that is going on Stillwater right now, at the time of this kick, it'll be 101 degrees at 3 o'clock, and it will feel like 104. That's a lot. We're going to take the under here on Oklahoma State, Utah.
Yeah, and look, if you have some upside on your bet here, if Rising doesn't play, then you're down to the backup. If Rising does play, how healthy is he throwing the ball, right? And then they don't really want to run him. They didn't want to run him coming into the year as much because of his health. Now he's dealing with an injury. I think that decreases the overall efficiency of this offense as well. So you have a lot of factors working in your favor. Brett, you're fading Oklahoma, and true to form, your second best bet as an alum is on your pokes.
First time I've taken him this year, Stuck. I feel really good because Collins lived in Arkansas. He's lived in Tulsa. I've heard he worked 2 weeks or 2 months in Utah. So I think the Pokes stay hot here. We talked about Rising situation. But look, even with Cam Rising, Utah has not been good away from Salt Lake City. And yeah, the heat is a real factor. And that's why I like Oklahoma State even more. They're used to this. Utah's coming down from the mountains. I think the Utes melt in the second half. And also, we haven't talked about this. Mike Gundy, when he is either an underdog or less than a field goal favorite, he covers, I don't know, like 80% of the time. I think this is a great spot for Oklahoma State. Everything lines up for them. If Rising was 100% and didn't have the injury, I would be a little bit concerned about Oklahoma State here. But again, Gundy as a home dog has been incredible, and the line's probably going to flop from Oklahoma State an underdog or Oklahoma State a favorite. But ultimately, I think they'll figure some stuff out running the ball. And that vaunted Utah defense, they gave up almost 400 yards to Utah State. Give me a break. They gave up 275 yards passing. Alan Bowman, 25 years old, 24 years old. He gets it done. Go Pokes.
Yeah, you mentioned Gundy. We'll see where this line closes at, but in this spot, he has been very good. I think since 2016, 8-1 against the spread as a home dog, won 8 of those 9 outright. So he has been very good in this spot. Calabrese, where you headed for your final best bet?
Well, Stuck, you mentioned it. UTEP catching the points against Colorado State. The Rams are coming off their Super Bowl. They talked a bunch of trash against Dion and the Buffs, and then they laid an egg. They scored 3 points through 3.5 quarters of that game. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi is clearly in a sophomore slump, and a big reason for that is he just doesn't have the weapons. Now that Torrey Horton is banged up, he's a groin injury. He's not playing in this game. In previous years, he could rely on guys like Justice Ross Simmons, who transferred to Syracuse, or Dallin Hoker, who's off to the NFL at tight end. They just do not have it. This is an underwhelming, below-average group of 5 receiving room, and for that reason, I think it's going to make it easier for a UTEP defense that's a little bit better than I thought they would be. I thought there was going to be a bottom 5 unit in the entire country. S&P Plus has them 115th in the country. They're generating negative plays. They're 60th in tackles for loss, and they're halfway decent in the red zone. So when they do play bend but don't break, they're ranking 49th in scores inside of their own 20 allowed. And then finally, the UTEP offense with Locklear at quarterback, it's flashed a little bit, and it's been a tough schedule. They played against Liberty last week, a team that went to the Fiesta Bowl last fall, and then they opened the season against Nebraska. So I think there's an opportunity for Scotty Walden's up-tempo, fast-paced offense to finally get some success, not have those quick 3-and-outs hanging their defense out to dry. But this is really an opportunity for me to fade a Colorado State offense that looks completely dysfunctional at this point. And Braden Fowler-Nicolosi is a quarterback that I want to find my spots to fade, and this is the one.
Like this one as well. Good stuff, gentlemen. But before we get out of here, one final task. Johnny Manziel's weekly Hail Mary pick of the week. Johnny? 1-2 on the year, up a unit. Started off with a bang with Vandy. Lost with Colorado. Had Tulane last week. I thought it was a pretty good pick. They were in that game until a turnover late in the game kind of flipped it, but they were right there. They were a live dog. Kind of a misleading final score. Johnny, what we look for here, touchdown plus underdog, not easy to pick, but where are you looking at this weekend?
This week, I'm going to go with Georgia Tech against Louisville. I really like Haynes King. This is a guy I got to spend some time around when he was at Texas A&M, a team that has been very, very good throughout the red zone this season and making sure they're finishing these drives, making sure they're getting into the end zone and getting points. A Louisville team that we really haven't seen play a lot of talent. You know, obviously Georgia Tech's win versus Florida State doesn't look as good now in week 4, but I think they have a lot of talent there. I think they, can go into this game and give Louisville some problems.
Thanks, Johnny. I don't mind that one as a shot, as a money line shot. Brent Key's been incredible as an underdog in his career. It's not the best spot, right? I mean, Georgia Tech, playing their 5th game already. Louisville, coming off a bye, but do we really know much about Louisville yet? Right, they've played 2 nobodies, so there's some variance there. And Georgia Tech just been so good as an underdog under Key. So good luck to Johnny. That'll do it for us. One quick final ad read before we get out of here. If you want access to all of Action's Pro Projections, make sure to sign up for our annual subscription that is currently on sale. Access includes exclusive player prop picks from Sean Kerner and other members of the Action Analytics team. You also get access to exclusive expert articles, our best spread, moneyline, and total bets, and real ticket and money percentages. To sign up, visit actionnetwork.com/pro today and use code BBOC at sign up. One more time, that's BBOC20 at sign up for $20 off. I want to thank Colin, Mike, Brett, our producers on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, hit that like button, subscribe to our new channel. We'll have tons more content, including live podcast episodes. We will have our live show each and every Saturday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern, all the way through the college basketball national championship. Don't forget about the voicemail, 959 Bad Beat. We'll have our recap episode of the entire weekend. That'll be out Monday morning. Group of 5 guys, Mike and Mike will be back midweek. Colin and I will be back for the week 5 college football betting preview. Overnight, Thursday, that episode comes out. Like I said, we'll be back same time next week. Thanks again for tuning in. Good luck on all of your wagers today, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.